I painted one full day, did a morning and afternoon painting here in near the Goleta Beach, just north of Santa Barbara. We're looking south on the coast. Took a break at the end of the painting day, went in and had a cocktail, and then came back outside and saw this incredibly low, beautiful, golden, reddish light. And so I mentioned initially that we know trees are green, although that's not green, but we know they're green. We see hints of a green flavor, but everything is geared towards a very, what we refer to as an analogous palette, very geared towards kind of a somewhere between an ochre and an orange. And so everything kind of hovers around that. So I've kind of diagrammed a few shapes in here to begin with. So we got a little bit of where the tree goes. These are the same concept that I've used many times as the word placeholder, simply because they're line and they're not mass. Usually when I refer to placeholders, I kind of refer to it as mass, but in this case, it's linear. So this is pretty much the rhythm that I see in the overall feel. And there's water that sweeps into about here. I love this little kind of ribbon of inlet that we have right in here. And then there's a feeling of, I want to talk a little bit about layering, I think, simply because we have layers, and let me explain that. So I've got a layer up here, some foliage, a little bit, few rocks that kind of come. Then we've got this strip of beach that comes back behind. This inlet becomes part of this eventually. All right, this little inlet here. Then we have the ocean, we have the beach, we have a hillside, we have trees, we have a hillside, and we have distance. So we've really, if you look at it, we've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 layers. Now, the reason I'm even bringing that up is as you paint, you want those layers to be separated somewhat, not necessarily with a lot of difference, but you want a little bit of separation. So what we're going to start with is this kind of beautiful, it's almost a Naples yellow sky right there. Now there's Naples yellow, and look at that. It's almost exactly what we're looking for. So I didn't even mix that Naples yellow. That's pure Naples yellow right out of the tube. Just no medium, just brushed in there. And it's going to work its way over. Eventually, it's going to pick up some beautiful warms and slight cools right in here. But we're going to start with pretty much that color all by itself. And at about this point, we'll start bringing in some warms. If I press real hard, I'm working on kind of a grayed canvas. Press really hard, a little of that color will come through. So I've got a little bit of a naphthol red that I'm going to mix in with this, and maybe some ochre. And the color that I have actually on my palette is quite warm, more warm than I want. So a little white, little ochre. And that's probably a little bit redder than I want it. Not bad. No, I'm gonna stay with that. If I amplify the color a little bit, I don't care, because I can always go back and adjust it. Really important to be aware. Throw a little more ochre, a little bit more white into it at this point, and then we're going to kind of do a little what we refer to as kind of a blend without really blending. And then as it goes up, it lightens. So we're going to add a little white to that color, a little bit more ochre, and come in here. Don't want to fuss on it. You know, I'm approaching this as if I were painting it on location. And I know I've mentioned that many times. I generally, whenever I paint in my studio, I always approach painting basically the same way that I would if I were on location. Now, the difference would be on some of the very involved architectural scenes, you know, scenes of Venice where we've got lots of perspective and a lot of windows. So in that case, I spend a little bit more time in the drawing. For with the idea of doing a finished type of painting. So what I did is I threw a little, I added some radiant blue into that color right there. And we're going to kind of work that in. And then bring a little bit more ochre right about in here. And there's kind of my mixture in my sky. And it's basically works. You know, I always use the word basically because I never know. You think, you know, you think after all the years of painting, I'd know whether it's going to work or not. And I generally will have a feeling, but until I really get it far enough along, I can't tell for sure. So that feels pretty good. So now we're going to start a little bit on this background. Keep it light. I'm going to keep it probably lighter than it appears here. And I'll use a little bit of light blue with the ochre. Maybe I threw a touch of burnt sienna into it, and it might be right. Now I want to get a little dark with the trees. So I'm going to take a little asphaltum and a little ultramarine of that color. And let's see what that looks like. That feels pretty good. That's a little darker than I want. More ochre. A little white. Yeah, I'm going to push it back even further, bring in some more Naples in. Okay. That feels better. I know I can darken it if I need to. So my mixture is a little bit of ultramarine, but not much. A little bit of burnt sienna, white, and as needed ochre. I'm going to bring it up to about here and try and get, now I haven't talked about the edges that I'm attempting to get. I'm trying to get the edges of those trees so that they feel done. So it doesn't feel like I have to go back and work and work and work to get the trees working. Couple of reasons. Number one, it's way in the background, right? Way, way back there. So I don't want to worry about too much detail. Secondly, time. So those two factors, you want to do as much as you can with as little effort. Oh, it's a good little statement, guys. You want to do as much as you can with as little effort. A couple things that happen if you can approach your paintings that way. Number one, they will not look overworked. And number two, you will maintain a degree of spontaneity to your piece.
For some reason the video's interrupted. I don't know what's going on.
Is it working? So I'm intermixing little reds and ochres and colors. And boy, I gotta be careful when I use that red because it's real powerful. Get some nice warms down in here. And we need that bank down there too. So got to do a couple things. Number one, got to darken these trees a little bit. I'm using a lot of asphaltum. I haven't used any green. I have used some ultramarine. It's the only cool I've used. Used a little bit of light blue here and there. A little bit of ultramarine. So I want that variation of color. This is the kind of area, these areas you could just go back and fuss and just adjust nuances of color forever.
I don't know if Tim can hear me, but it keeps cutting out. I don't know if it's on his end or our end. Some reason
Well, I know that we're having technical difficulties, everyone. I'm hoping that it's not affecting you.
Hey, Anna, I'm not hearing it cut out on my end. I have it on two other spots. Are you on your phone?
Yeah, I'm on a laptop, so it could just be, yeah, I don't know.
Let's hit an email up together, okay?
I'm going to keep painting then.
Keep painting.
Painting this warm bank. Hopefully you guys can hear me. you can't, I'm talking to myself, which is not that unusual. Comes to the tip, gets a little darker. Throwing a little more ochre in here and there. Just keep it kind of interesting. So I've kind of come up with a look. I haven't hit all this down below. Actually, there's some darks and they're kind of red. So I'm gonna take that color that I was using. I added a little bit of blue to it. And then again, way too much red. So I have to kind of go back and forth, kind of figure that color. It's gonna be, I think it's gonna be somewhere in here. Let's try that. That's not quite right, but almost. And we get some bizarre, almost violet kind of colors. Back all the way down into here. Kind of almost violet type colors again. So a little bit extra blue into it. A little bit more red. This time I think I'm going to try a little alizarin because alizarin's a cooler red. Alizarin and ultramarine will give me a kind of a nice, interesting violet. The colors actually feel okay. Now, the reason I'm saying that is I just stood back. And that's the only way you can tell. Honestly, you cannot, up close, I am not, whoops. I accidentally picked up too much white in my brush, and that was just a clumsy note on my behalf. Again, the red.
I
Kind
don't
of,
see the video at all now. So
you can't?
no.
I don't know. Nope. I don't know if I should keep painting or.
No.
But you could at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Doing some touch-ups because I don't know if you guys can hear. So I'm not trying not to jump way ahead. Or see, let alone hear. I mean, I don't even know what you're getting or what you're not getting. So a little brush, we just kind of brought out a few of the trees. I'm going to paint this dark mass up in here next. But I think I'll put a couple little reds in there first that I can kind of see. Like right about in here. You guys getting anything?
Trying.
Again, I'm not positive we're getting a, I'm getting a feed to all of you. I'm just assuming that I am.
No.
Nope.
Hold on 1 second. Should be coming through.
How are we doing?
Let's see anything.
I'm on standby here waiting to see if this comes through. Just kind of reset it.
I'm going to hold for a second.
Okay, hold for a second, yeah? Anna, what do you see on your end?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Hold for a moment. Let me double tap this and get it go. It seems like Facebook is having a bit of an issue taking the
Yeah.
feed. But it looks like, I mean, I can see you on Facebook.
You can.
I can. Anna, can you?
Nope.
She said no.
Okay.
I could leave it like this and call it abstract.
We'll do better than that. Hold on.
Okay.
Give me a moment. Let me just dig into the IT side of
You
this.
got it.
Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here with a paintbrush. I got.
Hmm? Turn this on.
Okay, so look like this dropped for the third time now. I'm going back in and redirecting.
Okay.
So we should be in a second now, and we'll just have to refresh the page for everyone. You're up. You're live.
I'm alive. Okay. So what we're going to try and do, lost a little time here. I'll try and still adhere to my time frame if I can. Punch in some of those darks, which tend to be a little cooler. So I threw a little ultramarine, little ochre, little red, little asphaltum, whatever I felt like I needed in this. Still don't want to go as dark. Nice edge there. Let's get a tree edge. Some beautiful warms on those edges that I can bring back in. So I've got it. I'm just laying darks in quick right now. Keeping them cooler. Why am I doing that? Because the lights have a lot of warmth in them. And we're going to pull some darks down here while we've got the set color in my brush. I'm going to bring some darks down there, maybe a touch more red into it because I just feel the red. So much of this, as you guys are making decisions, is about how you're feeling. Yeah, because you're really indicating the illusion. Some of this is in shadow, I can tell, because part of it is value, part of it is color. I can tell by the value in the color, it's not receiving that golden warm light. So Actually threw a little green for the first time into this color. So bring it right in here. Bring it up, over, down, where the kind of sneaks down. Up in here. We'll run this together if I have to. And then we're going to go down to the right as it hits on the sand, there is residue, shrubs, whatever you want to call it, right about in here. And we're going to go get down into that beach. All right. And the beach tends to be cooler. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ultramarine that same color. I'm going to add white. Ultramarine white, and I went to, so I'm going to add some asphaltum in there. It's got to be cooler, but once again, those values are really close together. That might work. I could probably stand a little bit more ochre into it, so I brought some more ochre. Yeah, it feels a little better. And then as it moves down, it gets darker. And as it moves back, it gets warmer. So what am I doing? I'm adding red to that same color I just used, and we end up somewhere in that range. A little dark. Right. So we're going to kind of just pull that, probably more ochre than red. I kind of messed up there. I think I went too red, so I just brought some more ochre back into it. We're going to go a little darker as it moves down. So what am I doing? Ultramarine and asphaltum. And you have to ask, is it warm? Is it cool? It's probably slightly cool, but it's quite neutral at the same time. And I know I've mentioned this many times, but even on colorful paintings, there's a lot more neutrals in the painting. And it's not just a circus of color upon color. It's quite neutral. And you're always better to keep your paintings a little bit more analogous, meaning kind of hovering around a specific color scheme, or as we like to call it, a mother color. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. Darker, too blue, right? So what I do, add a little bit of burnt sienna. So the kind of reds I'm using, just let me kind of go back. I have 3 different reds in my palette. I have an ultramarine, I have a burnt sienna, I have alizarin crimson, and I have a naphthol. The naphthol is the brightest red. The alizarin is the deepest, and the burnt sienna is the most neutral, even though it really isn't that neutral. It's pretty darn warm. Those are the 3 reds that I'm working with, but I use a lot of ochre in almost all the reds that I grab. So this is kind of the indication of what we might think of as seaweed on the beach. And you just want to use your brush, let it do the work. Don't sit there and force the strokes. Let the way you're laying the paint down become the seaweed. So coming down a little darker as we get down in here. Then we're going to go back to a little bit bluer, not a lot, but a little bit as we move down below, right here. Oh, that's pretty good, actually. Let's take a little bit more ultramarine and blue, maybe a touch of white. Just feels a little on the dark side. And add a little terp to that. I'm having to work really, you could hear how hard I was scrubbing. Oh, accidental color, but I kind of like it. So I'm not gonna get rid of it. And that happens. That's one of the cool things overall about painting. I know when I was a student, we used to call those happy accidents, and we try and leave them. And that's what I'm going to try and do. But it may not work, and I may get rid of it. When I was a student, I never tried to get rid of it. I always tried to work around it, and in many cases, to the detriment of the overall painting. Lighter. as it goes behind. So I just took the, I actually have radiant blue and not light blue out today because that's the tube I found. They're both quite similar. Light blue tends to have a little bit more color. The radiant blue is a little less color. A middle part right here. This part comes up. Well, look what happened there. Son of a gun. That's because I pressed and I hit in the ferrule of the brush. I still have a lot of other color, and I kind of like some of that. So if I press hard, I'll squeeze some of that color out, and I can see in this area right here, it tends to be the lightest. I'm not really sure why, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to paint it. Okay. And then it moves over. All right, I'm going to leave that alone because I don't want to dwell on it. We're going to put this foliage. Okay. I don't like that curve. I'm going to hit it one more time. A little ultramarine, a little, and I want it more severe. Okay. And let's get the foliage in. I'm going to take ultramarine. I'm going to take, ultramarine. I'm going to take asphaltum, a little green. A little more green. Now let's see how that, look at that. I layered that where I could actually work with a real nice dark up front here. The asphaltum, by the way, keeps enough warmth in it to keep it forward, keep it up front. You don't want to end up with a really strong, bright cool right up in your face because it just tends not to work. Kind of disappears into, we don't really see an edge, so it just kind of comes down to here. Starts maybe about here. There's some seaweed back on the beach right here. That helps push it behind. Let me get some dark in the rock formations. I'm gonna bring some ultramarine into that to help the depth, the darkness. I bring it up a little higher. I don't like the placement that I gave it, but it's okay. It'll work. Let's get kind of the top of this up where we want it, about in here. But I want to go over it at the last minute because I want it to overlap. Feels, I'm just looking. It's weird. I know it sounds odd, but I actually think while I paint. So because I'm assessing what I'm doing, realizing certain things are working, certain things aren't, and so I'm kind of going through in my repertoire of tricks. What do I need to do to make this thing come together? Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to get this nice, beautiful, warm color. I'm not going to chop this up. I'm going to make it more like a beautiful, what would you say? I'm going to grab, first of all, let's grab a cleaner brush because I have so much dirt in that brush. So I'm going to go back to my Naples, and we're going to start right up in here. I'm going to get rid of that rock. I don't like it. And I want to get rid of some of this paint here because it's just going to cause problems. So we're going to bring that down. And there's that nice Naples. I'm going to bring it over to about, I really only want it to about there because that's where I see it. Now we're going to bring it down. Kind of like the way it's going on. The Naples I'm using, which is a Blick Naples, just has got a wonderful consistency to it. So I don't have to use any medium. I mean, I'm just laying that on right from the tube. And we're gonna look and bring it right down here. If I need to augment, I'll tell you, well, I'm gonna have to fuss with that color a little bit. I can see it get a little bit warmer right up there. There. So I added the warmth, maybe too much, but I'll be the judge of that later on. As it goes down, I'm going to lighten it because that's what it looks like the sky is doing, and add a little blue to it right about at this point. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that right now. We're not going to go much further on that. I could dwell on a lot of these areas a lot longer, but if I do, I won't get the whole painting going. And that's, if you're on location painting plein air, that's one of your problems. You can spend a lot of time fixing, finessing, and a lot of times it's truly, this is something I've learned over the years, it's really unnecessary. You're just doing it because you think it needs it, and you're better to just leave it alone and figure it out at a later time. Assess it, see if it really does need it. Okay, so I have the basic lay-in of all what you would consider the primary darks. I want to get some of this sky color down in the water here, so I'm going to go back with my Naples again, and I'm going to bring it right about here. Bring it up above it. There we go. And I'm going to take a look because it cools off. Stays pretty warm at about this point. Maybe a touch warmer. I can see it right in here. But we're going to bring that tree back, that foliage back over the water. Now, same kind of from there, gets cool, but about here, it picks up that sky color again. Because why? It's very flat, wet sand, so it's really highly reflective. So we really want to pick it up about here. And then slightly warmer, but right there. And it works its way back a little. So we're recarving that shape. All right. That's tending to work. I'm going to keep moving here. Lost a little bit of time with so I may run 10 minutes over. I usually do anyway, but I'm gonna try and keep pretty close to what the plan was. So I've mixed a little bit of blue into that, but I also see some warm right about here, right about here. Get those colors underneath. So when you come over with your final lights, it'll begin to work. I'm ripping through Naples. So I just squeezed Naples out for the third time, which is fine. Don't mind it at all. I needed it. And I'm going back to the light blue now. So I'm violating a little of that color scheme. I've got enough Naples in it that it's still holding in there. The Naples, not the Naples, excuse me, the ochre. By keeping enough ochre in it, I'm keeping it in harmony with a lot of the other colors I already have down there. And that's probably one of the most difficult things you have to deal with, is to keep these colors harmonized and don't let them jump around too much on you. Added a little bit more ultramarine and a little more ochre, and I want to get it right about off this, right? It's probably too dark. Let's throw some white into it. Okay, let's try it again. Leave that alone. Now I'm going to hit the edge of that wave, and it tends to have a little bit of warmth to it. it's probably unfair calling it a wave. It looks like it comes from right about here. Right there. So I shortened it. All right. And I want to take this ochre, bring it over and start to separate a little bit in here because I can see a little bit of that ochre. So I need to kind of, I use the word ochre, I meant Naples. Okay, moving along here, I'm going to mix up kind of a violet color. I'm going to use a little bit, and for that I'm using a little bit of my ultramarine light blue and a little bit of alizarin. A little darker than I wanted, so I'm throwing a little bit more light blue into it. Now, if that doesn't come out that far, which it shouldn't, then this wave can come back about in here, which I think would be better. A little bit more light blue into it. That light blue is working actually pretty well. Value is the key in this area right now. It's not just that color is important, but honest to God, it's the closeness of value that's going to make it work. I can have the right color, but if I don't get that value right, I don't care what I do, it's not going to work. So I'm looking for the movement. I can also see a little more white into that right. There. And back to the pure Naples, right below it. Right there. Go in and kind of give the edge to that wave. So now we've got a little bit of the edge of that wave coming in. And it can probably come in from here a little bit more. Creating the feeling of water is really a matter of laying it in, going back and adjusting and constantly adjusting with both color and with value. And it's one of those things you could do that for a long, long time. With, it all depends upon how refined you want this piece to be. So I want to soften, put some what do you call it? Moisture in the air there and fog that back. I see it that way. I'm pushing it now. All right. So I'm going back to the blue, light blue, and a little touch of ultramarine because it didn't quite have the value that I wanted right here. A little bit of, I got to warm that up just a little bit. There we go. I see people do the same thing with water that I mentioned. Is what happens is, look, people think it's like trees. You think trees are green, you think water is blue. But trees can be all kinds of different color, and water can be anything because it's so darn reflective. So don't, let me use Richard Schmidt's saying, paint what you see, not what you know. Okay, we're starting to get it. It's beginning to feel okay. A lot of feeling in this, a lot of subtlety and adjustments in this piece. I mean, you could leave it out, but it won't be as effective. It's just, it would be a more abbreviated, indicative. Depends on how real you want it to be. You want it to be really real, then it's going to take you a long time. You want it to have a nice painty feeling. It's not going to take quite as long, but it's still, you don't achieve that in 1 or 2 layers. All right. Let's take this central piece. So it's down here. I see, right down about in here. And we'll bring it back. And then it gets some, I'm going to bring some burnt sienna. That's a little too red, huh? I wanted a nice red, but I want a dark. I don't want it. I'd rather have it not the right red right now and be able to come back later and strengthen the red. Okay. It's breaking up pretty good. There's things I do and there's things I don't like about it. I haven't started in. Let's start in on some of those worms up in the trees. So I'm starting with ochre. A little burnt sienna. That's really red. I'm going to try that. That's just way too red, I think. Oh my God, it's not. It's not good. I like it when I shock myself. I second guess it. You know, you judge the color in your palette, but until you get it up next to the colors on the painting, you're really not sure. I think it's a little bit on the red side. I'm throwing a touch of blue to it, just kind of soften it and make it not as abrasive of a red. That's a little bit better, feels better. And I kind of have to move pretty quickly on these. So we're going to try and get edges in as quickly as possible. That's where this little brush is just a wizard, I think, at doing this kind of stuff. A little bit. Now what I have is a big pile of paint, and I have it slightly cooler on one end, slightly warmer on the other. So I can kind of filter back and forth when I want to get warmer, like now, or if I want to get cooler, I go up to the top. So we want this warm to come back on top. Looks like I'm going to need more ochre too. And I can see it got cooler as it moves up. Interesting. Interesting what you observe as you move along, the subtleties that you begin to notice that you didn't notice on your first take at something. And as you get into it, all of a sudden you start noticing these other little cool things that give you an experience and teach you something about indication, because you know you can't paint every little aspect of it, but you can indicate it. So as it moves up, I'm going to take and move a little bit more green into it, keeping it the same value. So I'm mixing it kind of in the same color. This is probably too green, but let's give it a shot. Yeah, it is. Bring a little bit more ochre into it. And maybe a little bit more red right at the very top. Now, whether you can tell or not, that color has more green in it than the color that I use down below. And it's darker. And we're going to kind of go up here. I want to finish some of this off, because I know I'm not going to have time to go back on it. I'd love to, but I'm not going to have the time. A little bit more of the red. Let it work its way down. A little cooler down in here. Push, pull. Sideways stroke, up and down. Whatever it takes, you do. If it's not working one way, try another way. And I'm talking about paint strokes. Paint strokes aren't working. If you just stroke it, dab it, pull it, push it, whatever it takes to achieve the effect that you're after. I gotta pile some more ochre on my palette. I think I'm at it, and I haven't done it yet. Talk to you while I'm squeezing paint out here. I'm going to squeeze a little more ochre, quite a bit more ochre. I'm also going to squeeze a little raw sienna, which is kind of more of a reddish ochre color, just because I think it might work really well. Could be wrong, but And I'm also going to be able to mix more of the darker cools that sit back in the recesses of this piece. I mean, the piece of foliage here is actually pretty important. So you want it to be as refined as you can get it without, overdoing it. So I'm deciding I need to go a little darker. And that's why you see me kind of taking this brush and kind of fussing around here and there, yeah, down in here, as it goes back behind. And I might have been, I'm okay. I would say I might have been wrong with that guess, but when I just kind of took one step back, it seemed to be okay. So we're gonna a little bit more of that green kind of reddish color here, down in here. Get rid of some of these hickeys. So we're developing a richness to the foliage. Okay. I'm going to leave that alone for right now, just because I need to get into other areas. Not that I think that that's the way I want it, but I do need to get into these banks. All right. Then in here, whatever time I still may have, then I can go back and fix and fuss. So where are we at? About almost 40 minutes left. So I'm going to start with ochre, white, and just a touch of red. Again, I'm really apprehensive about using too much because this naphthol, when I hit, it just pops and it becomes way too powerful. So let me see what we're at here, okay? Pretty close. That's values about right. Color looks pretty close too. There's more variation, but right now we're not going to deal with the variation. We're just going to get the basics in there. And if I have time, I'll go back and make some areas a little lighter, some areas a little more red. A little more red now. So I'm going to add a little bit more red to that ochre color, just a touch.
What brush are you using?
I'm still using my little gesso brush right now, simply because I need to cover territory quickly. And with this, I know I can cover a lot of territory very rapidly. Add a little bit of alizarin in there. I'm going to get them a little bit darker as we move back. Bring that over a little bit more. Sneak back in there. So it's starting to have the correct feeling. Are all the rivets and everything exactly where I want them? And the answer is no. But I'm painting the feeling of this. I'm not painting the exactness. It's the same concept. What I just got through saying is the same concept of doing a head painting or a portrait painting. Okay, a portrait painting, you want the eyes exactly the right shape, the right distance apart, all of that. In a head painting, you want the head to feel good. And you maybe get the character of the individual without getting the exact detail. And so that's really the difference between, say, portraiture and head painting, which is comparable to landscape painting. You're not painting a portrait of the landscape, you're painting the feeling of it. The other thing to keep in mind about landscape is you're just painting the way that landscape looks that day, that year, that month, with that light. Where a year from now, it could look quite a bit different. And I've gone back and painted many a landscape, same place, different time, go back, you paint it, it's a totally different animal. I mean, it's not the same image that you had painted. And you could look at your old painting and think you did something wrong, but you probably didn't. You just painted it that day with that light during that year. So we got some of the richness and feeling of that area going on. You know, I could dwell on it longer, but once I think it's kind of okay, and I'm using that term, it's kind of okay. It's working. If you didn't look at this, you'd look at this and say, well, it looks okay. So that's what I'm doing at this point. I see a few more lights, not a lot. Pull it down in here, leave it alone. Now let's work to the back cliff. We'll come up, we'll add more in here. Let's work back here. I'm going to take a smaller little, here we go. We got a number, I think it's an 8. Yeah, it's a number 8 rosemary. Filbert. We're going to go right in here, maybe a little bit in here first. And I'm going to use a similar color, but I'm pushing it into a color that's already there. So knocking it back, nice, kind of a light colored, warm. I can get the right color here. Beach sneaking out from right here. Yeah, good. And we'll go back to the cooler colors and we'll add, well, not quite that cool. It's a little bit of a beach back here. It's warm at that point, and then the blue sneaks in. So we're going to pull that blue of the water in there a little bit. Bring this bank out a little bit more. And the blue, the light blue of that water is going to come right over, right there, right about there. Don't be too timid. Pretend like you know what you're doing. I think you've heard that before, haven't you? A little bit more to this wave, the edge. It's too sharp. I'm going to leave it alone now. I don't have time to sit and over worry it. This point, on this point right here, it's a little darker. So I've actually cooled it and darkened it just a little bit as it sneaks out. A little bit variation in the land mass. A few subtle darks, not too dark. Down in here. Tree shapes look pretty good. I think I could go a little lighter right on the edge. And liner, another liner, what do we got? A liner handy? Here we go. I had 2 of them, I know.
I just handed you 3 of them.
I got them. So we're gonna put a few of those little trunks in back there and keep them kind of that color. There's one right here. For this, I'm using a lot of medium, Turk and a little bit of medium combined. We get one there, we get one there, get some up in here. Put too many, and if you have to, then just take them out. Comes all the way here. And another one. Now, with that same color I was just using, same color, I'm gonna a lot of medium ochre, just a touch of red to warm the ochre up, and a lot of white. Maybe a little maples thrown into it also, and medium. You gotta have medium because we're starting to paint on paint now. The more you're applying paint to wet paint, the more medium you really need. Now add a little bit more red to it. And we're gonna come in.
What medium are you using again?
I'm using the solvent-free gel right now. Probably could be using a smaller brush, but I don't have time to go pick one up, so I'm staying with this. I'm doing what I'm telling a lot of you guys. I'm pretending like I know what I'm doing. Keyword is pretend. So when I stand back, it works. Up close, I'm not crazy about it. But when I stand back, it feels like it's okay. Same color, a little darker, a little bit more red, a little bit more ochre. And we're going to come back on this hillside and find a few lights. I'm going to push this paint into the paint. I don't want it quite as light. So by making 2 or 3 strokes, you push it right back into that color. And you start to give it a little bit of activity. There's more activity up in here. If I have time, I'll put it in. And take a little bit of the dark color and the red color together, and I can come back behind these foreground trees and put some of the dark that I begin to see back in there. Close value key is the key here, everybody. This value cannot be too dark or it'll jump out in front. So it's got to be just about right. If it feels too dark, I will purposely go back and try and change it. Okay, it's beginning to feel, and I'm standing back, it's beginning, I don't like this. This is okay, but I could really get a lot more going on in here. But I want to keep moving so I do have the time to go back to that. So let's keep moving. Let's move on the water for a little bit in here. Now there's houses and stuff. I'm not going to even worry about that. Just like if I wanted to amplify a tree, I can come in with more sky color. Chisel it away. Sky color is pretty easy. You just have to be close. Sky holes here and there. I don't know what the heck that. Oh, that's just a mistake. All of a sudden, I stood back and I saw this light area pop out at me, thinking, "What in the heck?" Using that brush is the key to this kind of stuff. Not over rendering, but trying to create the character of the landscape, because that's landscape painting is really more about that than it probably is anything else, creating the appropriate character of the painting. So you notice there's a lot of figures there. I'm not going to put them in. And that's basic time orient. I kind of don't want to. I want this to be a landscape. You know, so I love painting figures. So for me to leave a figure out is kind of a big deal. Really I want to give the feeling of the edge of that correctly. The same here. There's a little bank peeking out into the water right about there. And right back in here, a little bit more variation down the landscape. Okay, let's get to this reflection down here. I've been avoiding that. I need to get this going. This is an important area, and this is an important area. And then I can go back and really mess around a little bit if I want to. Okay, but if I don't get those two things going, the rest of it really doesn't matter. Okay, so we got the lighter of, again, I've got 2 of these gesso brushes, these 2-inch 1.5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically mimic this in a warmer tone. So I'm adding red to kind of the dark and a little ochre to the dark that I had. I'm adding a little bit of safflower oil to it. I'm going to take a look at that. That's not bad. Start with it. A little more red than I wanted. but I'm going to be mixing 2 or 3 colors together constantly here to kind of try and get the right look. Let's try a little bit of green into it. Okay. Now, we want it to come from here because it's this bank of foreground trees. It's that bank of trees right there. Okay. Oh, more burnt sienna, probably too much. Now, if that's the reason I did that is I can always take this brush and do that. So I'm never too worried about whether an edge is too blurred or not blurred enough or too sharp, because I know I always have the opportunity to go back into it and take it further. I've got the basic tone in there. And what I want to do is with the bigger brush, I just used it a second ago. So I'm going to pick it up again and bring the ochre and the red. And we're going to kind of go a bit here and there, and then maybe bring a little bit. Just have fun with your brushwork. Make it work. And I'm going to deepen that color a little bit. The color I was just using with a little blue and a little burnt sienna. Blue, burnt sienna together. Darker, see it? I don't want it to be the exact color, one flat color, because the trees are not one flat color. So just by kind of intermixing a little bit of variation in there, we can get that. But I do know that at this point, we've got that sky sneaking in there, huh? So let's pop that in there. Let's leave it alone. I need to work in other areas. I wanted it really loose up here, so I'm going to keep it like that. Now, I do notice in my reference that as this water moves over here, it moves into shadow and it's getting a lot of cool blue. So I've taken the pure light blue, I've mixed just a smidgen, you hear that word much, I'll do you, smidgen of ochre, not ochre, excuse me, ultramarine blue and alizarin. Okay, and we get a little bit there. So one of the things I want to do is I want to take that area right there. Okay, gonna leave it alone. That looks kind of neat. I kind of like that. Okay, you take some white into that color and some medium, and we're gonna get a little, maybe a little maples too, huh? Because I see it get a little warmer. Okay, we're gonna there. That's gonna go to red. I'll show you. As this moves back, this becomes part of this. That stroke, that mass. And it's got quite a bit of red in it. So ochre, red, white, and let's start right about here. And we want them to join. So I'm getting kind of that feel. I don't have the darks in there that I really need. I need more darks. I could use a brush and I could use a knife, and I think I might take a knife to it. If I can find one. So we want a little dark, kind of goopy. Knives will just give you different kind of stroke characteristics. And I like them. I didn't use it this time, but I really like them when I do seaweed. It really kind of ends up working pretty well for that. So for example, I'm going to take ultramarine and a little bit of, what do we have? Asphaltum, little touch of white, probably too much white. More asphaltum, maybe some green, maybe some blue. I want a dark, maybe a little alizarin too. No, more blue. I threw too much white into it, so I kind of messed myself up. Here's what we want to do. It's too red. So I just threw more ultramarine and even more. Okay, let's try it again. And down here at the bottom and up here at the top. Now what I generally do is we'll go back with a brush and adjust some of that if I don't like it. So we're putting that activity back in the sand, and we don't want to paint it like sand, and that's one of the advantages of using this knife. Now, if I get that in there and I think, boy, it's not working, I can always take whatever color and I can go back and trim it away and brush it out a little bit like that, and use the color, come in with a couple more strokes, because you want variations. Now, as it comes forward, as this plane comes forward to this, it gets darker. So we just use the color I was basically painting with and darken this edge. Accidental that I didn't like. It's shaping up, not crazy about that. So I'm gonna fuss around with my larger brush. It's not bad. It's I think I need to bring a little bit of stridation across it here and there. Kind of like what I was doing. So with this kind of an area, you work your way back and forth until you're happy with it. And I'm not right now, but I might be. It's starting to feel better, in my opinion. That's the thing I need to make statements about, in my opinion. Because you're always painting according to your own opinion. Now I want that to fade more. Let me pick some ochre. I want it to fade more. I want it strong, but I want it to fade. It's starting to. Okay. I need to do a little bit more work into the trees, so I'm kind of going to watch my time a little bit. Let's go back and pronounce some of that stuff. Some of the things that I want to do.
Can you talk about the different mediums you use and Gamsol? And that sort of thing?
I'm using Gamsol for my turf. I have a little bin of safflower oil, and then I have a squeeze of solvent-free gel. And those are basically the 3 different mediums I go back and forth on. Little tree holes. Not that they're necessary, but once again, just a little added character. A few little tree trunks peeking through, which I don't have to put in, but I think I'm going to. One there. And you can add them in wherever you want. You don't have to stay true to your reference. It just, it gives it, you know, what your reference is just what I said. It's reference. So, you know, whether you do it exactly like that or not is one of those choice things. If you, and sometimes I'll notice a day later that why did I do that? And I realized I did that because that's what the reference showed. But from an artistic point of view, was maybe not the best decision. Okay, now I said I was going to try and get a little variation in this ground here so we can kind of move back into some of these areas I was hoping to get into earlier. So we're going to put some cools. Right in here, I see it a lot. It's just, it's kind of a neutral cool. It's not a real. And a couple of things you can do that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add some more navels and I'm going to get some more lights. So it's not only warm, but now we're going to get a little bit of light variation. And all we're doing is bring a little bit more detail to an area like this, or the feeling of detail. Just little tiny variations can make a huge difference. It can make it feel like you've painted detail when you really haven't. You've just added a little bit. You just haven't left it at one tone. It's brightening up some of the warmth on the top of that plane. Not one of the areas I'm not really thrilled with right now is this overall, whoops, too light. Like that is this overall plane that goes up and sweeps back. Because there's some real beautiful little subtle warm variations in there. Starting to get them. The darks are starting to work. I could probably, as I look at it, afford to push those a little bit more. So I've taken the little bit of red, a little bit of blue and asphaltum, and we're going to start to amplify some of the darks, strengthen them, so to speak, giving a little bit more character and definition. Going a little warm on me just means if I feel it's too warm, I just add the blue. If I feel it's too cold, I add the warm.
It's a good question from Bill Cook. When looking at value versus color, do you squint or something to focus on values, or does your mind just kind of focus on dark and light versus hue, temperature?
I do squint, but a bigger help for me is stepping back, because your values will always look stronger up close. When you step back, they may not be as strong. So I find stepping back is the key in that regard. Getting back, I would say, 6 feet. Like in what I'm doing now is I basically step back about 2 feet. And this is an 18 by 24. 2 feet really isn't far enough back, but it gives me a better sense of how the painting looks than it does by me just standing. Like right now, I'm maybe 20, 24 inches away. But if I stand back 2 or 3 feet, I see the painting more as a whole. And then I can judge little things. And if something pops out at me and says, whoa, obviously it doesn't say whoa, but if something pops out at me and I notice, oh my God, that's way too, then I go and adjust that right away. But I kind of look at the painting. I try not to look at any one specific area of the painting. I try and look at the painting as a whole. And I think that's probably the biggest key, is learning how to look at your painting as a whole, and not what I used to do. And what I think a lot of individuals do is they dwell on an area that they're having problems with. A lot of times when you stand back, you realize it's not that big of a problem. It's better And there are other areas. So I try and not guess. And I think hopefully I state this. Whoa, see, that's way too dark. Hopefully I state that as I'm painting that, it's fine. It's good enough. Move on. And that's when I say that, what I mean is exactly that. It's good enough. Move on. In other words, in my mind, I'm saying I will assess that at a later time. Now, I got to watch it because I'm starting to fuss with a little tiny brush here.
Barbara wants to know if you ever used a reducing glass.
No, I haven't. I've actually, I never have, come to think of it. I have friends that use them. A good friend of mine that used to have a gallery in Carmel painted in his gallery, and it was very small. And so he actually used reducing glass, and he eventually came up with a system of mirrors where he could step back, or he could sit in the same spot, and through the mirror reflection in the mirrors and then reflecting back, he could actually create the reduction. I'm I guess old school, and I just keep stepping back. I'm so used to it that it's part of my nature. And when I paint outside, I do the same darn thing. I step back a lot. When I demonstrate, I don't step back as much, just because it takes a little more time, obviously. So I don't step back as much when I demonstrate. That's why a student was saying, well, you really paint fast. And one thing I would like to state right here and now, I don't paint fast. Okay, I demonstrate fast. When I paint, I take time. I mean, I like to look at my paintings and see if they're working, just like you guys do. So, now plein air, yeah, you have to paint relatively quick on a plein air piece. So, but don't feel like, I only paint for time when I demonstrate and when I used to illustrate. When you used to illustrate, you have to paint for time, because your deadlines are your deadlines, and you can't just go, well, I'm going to work another day on this piece. Now, if it's due that day, it's due that day. It's one of the things that I thought was extremely helpful in art school, truthfully. The fact that we all had deadlines and we had to get something done. And I did pride myself. I told many a student, I never, in my 4 years of college, I never missed a deadline, ever. I did paintings that I didn't think were that great, turned those in, but I never missed a deadline. And I always knew that if I had just put another 4 hours, 5 hours into a piece, I probably could have made it look pretty good. But that was one of the best training grounds I ever had, was being forced to meet deadlines.
I was too scared to miss a deadline.
And I don't know, I know a lot of art students that I have don't take that as seriously as I did. They want their painting to look great. Hell, I understand that. I did a lot of illustrations that when they were done, I went, oh man. In fact, I don't think I ever did it. I don't think I ever did an illustration that I felt that if I worked on it another few hours, it would have been so much better. And I could say that about paintings, because when I look back at paintings that I've done, if I keep them around long enough, generally I can make them work to my total set if I keep them around long enough. But even, I've gone back, there's a great line. I don't know if it's a true story, but Edgar Degas, the great painter, French painter, had done a commission. And I hope this is true, because it's such a damn good story. And was asked over to dinner a few years later. He went to dinner at these people's home, and commission was hanging right apparently in one of their main rooms. And he saw it, and he begged them. I don't know if he ever got it, but he begged them that he could take it back and work on it. And I did a portrait when I was at art school for my accountant at the time. Portrait of his wife, kind of really large. And I remember after I got out of art school, several years, I'd go to his office and I'd have to look at that thing, and I begged him, told him the story of Edgar Degas. You know, a lot of times people not in the know who, but told him the story of Edgar Degas. I never got it back to fix it. So to make the long story short, he said, but they like it the way it is. You know, my wife likes it the way it is now. Yeah, and that's what you're pleasing, I guess. It wasn't to my taste. I saw things that I just didn't think were that good. But, you know, can't dwell on it. Can't make everything a gem. God, it sure would be nice if you could, huh? You think of all these great artists from our, I mean, the masters, Rembrandt. Think of John Singer Sargent. And I know some artists, and I've heard this told, literally burn pieces they never want people to see. I haven't done that yet. I just hide them in my garage or break them in half and throw them in the garbage. It's amazing. Where are we at? I've got about 5 minutes. I'm stepping back. I actually like what I've done here. Some of these little strokes are a little too maybe pronounced, but I like the fact that it's giving me a little bit of information there. Before it was just a little too underdone. See a little bit more the darks up in here, and I see a few little tree holes I could add. I don't like to add them with a little brush. So why am I adding them with a little brush? Because what I have in my hand, that's why. That's why I say I can demonstrate fast, but I don't paint fast at all. In fact, you know, I know there's a lot of competitions out there where they do what they call quick draw paintings. I think it's great, it's fun, but it's not, it's a different kind of painting. It's an immediate reaction. I call it, like I teach a course called Quick Studies, which I've taught for years, and I wrote a book based on it. That's very honest painting, very honest. In other words, you do it, it's done, and you move on. It may not be great, but you really feel the artist's hands, the artist's decisions. And so in that regard, in many respects, it's just true, reactive, honest. May not be the refinement that someone might like to have in their paintings, but it's a very visceral kind of reaction that an individual happens to have as they paint. And so I think sometimes it's the most fun. Other artists collect other artists' work, and generally that's the kind of work they collect, is the quicker, more spontaneous types of things, as opposed to the studio, refined, finessed piece. A little thing I've learned about myself is I've just talked about two types of painting. If I do too much of one, I crave to do the other. If I do too much quick plein air or quick paintings, I crave to want to do some long, refined, finished paintings. And so I need the balance. Not everybody is the same. I mean, there are people that need that, and then there are people that strictly work one way. They either are a pure plein air type artist, or they're a pure studio artist. And I could say the same thing is true for me regarding figurative art. If I stay away from doing figures for too long, I have this huge desire to want to do figures. And if I stay, if I stay away from architecture too long, I want to do architecture. If I stay away from landscape, I want to do landscape. So I don't know. Got to find that balance that your personality needs. Little art philosophy there, everyone. This is the fun stuff, what I'm doing now. This is the stuff that I could go on and go on and go on with, but we're just about out of time. And even with the messed up delays today, and I apologize for that. It's not my fault. It's not anyone's fault except for lack of, let's just blame Facebook.
No, don't do that.
Huh? No, it's not. It's technological.
Things that we do not understand.
Yeah. Anna just said there's things that we do not understand. And that is a mouthful, because man, when it comes to anything technological, you might as well be speaking Greek to me. Literally. I'm just not a wizard at that. You know, I can paint in a few different mediums, and those are my tricks. I'm just stepping back here, see if there's anything else I want to do. There may be. Don't like that area right there. Don't know why. Feels too dense. I could probably just lighten it up. This is just a layering thing. You could layer and layer and layer forever until you really have what you want in these kind of an areas.
Would you add any more variations in reflection?
I might. I like the looseness. I like the spontaneity of the reflection. The only thing I might add is color variations, like some of these reds I might want to maybe add. I don't want to, I'm just trying things when it comes into this. That helps. Just little touches. I might put them in, take them out, put them in. I like the edge. That I would not change. As far as other elements, I don't know. I want a little bother in the water, but not too much. Sound like Winnie the Pooh. I want a little bother. Jeez. So what happened? We started reviewing the old Winnie Pooh things because of our grandchild, and they're great, man. We used to watch them all with our kids, and their phrases that they use. It's like if I use the word shrubbery, I can't help but thinking of Monty Python. Bother reminds me of Winnie the Pooh. So.
Bother.
Oh, bother. Let's see, maybe a little lighter right here, huh? A little bit of variation. All that does is give a little bit of movement to that flat shape. Probably have a little too light here. I could do a little bit of lightning right there, but for all intents and purposes, I may go back and touch things up when I get away from it for a little bit, because what we plan to do is take our animal, our dog, for a walk. And that's what we're going to do after this. And then when I come back, who knows? I may see things I think are wonderful, or I may see things that I think really need to work, and I may touch it up. But I won't do, for everyone's sake, including my own, I don't like to take these things and turn it into a totally different painting. In other words, any touch-ups I do, I try and minimize them. The same that I do if I go outside and I do a plein air piece, I minimize it. If I do any touch-ups, people have asked me if I ever go back in the studio and rework it. The answer, rework, is no. Touch-up, yes, but really minimal touch-up, minimal. Okay, I think that's basically what we're going to get for today. And we're going to do another one. One thing that I will be doing in the future, we just talked about this today, since I will be teaching my European workshop this year, which I'm really looking forward to. Those 2 to 3 weeks that I'm gone, we will be doing, we're going to do some location, hour and a half location paintings, put them in the can, so to speak. That's technical talk for literally giving them to the guys, Tim and whoever's helping us, and let them put them up on the Fridays. Because my plan is to keep doing this through the end of the year, or through Christmas at least. Then who knows? I think by then I'm going to be I will have painted too many subjects, and you guys need a break. So happy painting, everyone. Keep up. Just don't give up. Work hard and have fun.